Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, Derek, and I hope you're as excited as I am today because there is a new Sega Model 2 emulator out now that you can play on your PC, Xbox 360, or even Xbox Series X. That is because the developer, this Wanszai, has done a bunch of emulation in 2026, bringing over a ton of Sega Model 1 games as well as Namco System 22 games with the Ace Driver collection along with the Ridge Racer arcade collection. And when I say this dude absolutely is destroying it in 2026 when it comes to emulation improvements, I 100% mean it, and honestly, Sega Rally with Model 2 emulation might be their best actual release to date. This is a Hall of Fame first ballot game, best every day of the week and twice on Sunday experience, and honestly, compared to every other option you have to emulate Sega Model 2 games, this one is now de facto, in my opinion, the absolute best, and definitely something that you need to experience yourself. But before I get too much further involved, don't think that means I'm saying that MAME emulation of Sega Model 2 is bad in any way, shape, or form. It is not. I still absolutely love it. It's just one of those things. This is enhancing the graphics, giving you a higher internal rendering resolution and better performance, and that's something that MAME will never do because they're focused on accuracy, not on speed. This honestly feels like the exact same quality of stuff that you would get out of something like Supermodel Emulator for the Sega Model 3, because you can bring this thing up to ultra wide, you can bring it up to 16:9, you can run it at 4K internal render resolution, you can basically make this thing absolutely just go wild, and that is definitely something that I love to see. But honestly, we need better Sega Model 2 emulation because there's so many incredible games on the board, and it's definitely something that I really love and enjoy. And when you have a game as perfect as Sega Rally, in my opinion, nothing I would change about it to improve it. If all you want to do is play it in a better format, then Wanszai 100% has you covered. And it's not only for a release of something like the original Sega Rally. Think of it this way, now that they have that emulation stood up, it is working, we could be living in a world at some point in time where you have every single Sega Model 2 game available for emulation on Xbox Series X as well as PC with all of these quality of life improvements and enhancements, and that is definitely a world I want to live in. But let's focus directly on Sega Rally and not the overall Model 2 library, because I would love to talk about that a little bit later in the video. As far as Sega Rally is concerned, in Wanszai's new emulator, it looks, sounds, plays, and feels exactly like the Sega Rally we all know, love, and remember. Because the number one thing about this game is the physics and handling system. It is, in my opinion, maybe the best thing ever put to a rally-style drifting game from Sega or anybody else, and if that wasn't coming over one-to-one with what you'd expect out of real arcade hardware, or the best emulation out there previous to this, then it really wouldn't be fun to play whatsoever. Because if you couldn't control your car correctly, if you couldn't navigate around the courses, drift, and basically do whatever you wanted, it would not be a success. And the nice thing is, not only does this have controller support, but of course it also has wheel support. You can change up the dead zones, and I'll show you some of those options later on in the video. It also comes with force feedback as well as haptic feedback, so you get a lot of actual kind of physical connection to the controller or to your wheel. You can feel your car kind of slipping out, and it really does provide you an extra feedback loop to be even better at the game. And I will say, again, racing the car around the track, it felt exactly the same as sitting at an arcade cabinet or playing the best version available before Wanszai released this emulator. So on the playability, on the feel of the game, it is 10 out of 10, no notes. I just can't think of anything I would say to improve it. Now on the visual side of things, of course, we're getting enhancements here, and that's going to be a big deal. I did have to resize this down to 16:9 with some conforms in Resolve, because by default it'll stretch itself from full screen to your monitor's aspect ratio, and for me that is ultra wide. I've got two side by side for editing, so that's something I would love to see in the options menu in the future, the ability to go windowed, because Alt Enter does not allow you to do that, because Enter on the keyboard is actually Command within the emulator itself. So the one thing I would definitely maybe improve for a new release is just the ability to select window mode or kind of conform 16:9 even if you have an ultra wide monitor. I mean, really constraining it didn't make much of a difference whatsoever. It's about a 2-second job in Resolve, but it is something that I've noticed not only in this emulator, but in a few projects recently where they always assume that you're going to be on 16:9 and nothing else, but it is the most minor of things. But let's go into the first soundtrack sample, hear how the audio quality is, and then I'll talk about the fact that this also allows for custom soundtracks if you want it. But enjoy.
Easy left. Medium left. Medium right. Checkpoint. Easy left, maybe. Easy left, maybe. Long medium right. Caution, hey left. Sega Rally Championship.
I mean, it sounds like Sega Rally to me, but you leave me a comment down below and you tell me what you think. Now, on the settings menu here, you're going to see you have comprehensive video settings, and I'm rendering this at internal 4K. You can go 16:9, you can go 4:3. On the controller and wheel setup, you can change the dead zone as well as the linearity of the actual analog travel, not only for the wheel, but also for the gas and the brake. And even though I feel like this is absolutely dialed in based upon its default settings, you can do whatever you want. Additionally, you can change up the actual soundtrack by adding in your own sound files and renaming them to the appropriate names in MP3, which will be on the GitHub link in the description below, and you can kind of create your own Sega Rally soundtrack. Obviously, I went with the original because 1, it is not going to get flagged on YouTube for the most part. I certainly hope not at this point in time, although things have been getting weird with Sega lately. And 2, I want you to hear what the game actually sounds like in its native audio. There is one thing about the GitHub right now, though, that I will send an issue ticket in after I'm done with this voiceover. The file it tells you to put into the folder is actually misnamed because it's going to say Sega Rally 3C.7z is the file you need. The file I put in was srally3.zip. That is basically what you'd use for MAME, and it ingested it and worked fine. So I'm not sure if there's 2 different files out there, but the file name I used is not correct because that file really isn't something that exists, at least to my knowledge, and the game ran perfectly fine with the actual MAME .288 files that I gave it. So if you're thinking about trying to find that out there out of your legally owned Sega Rally cabinet, just be aware that that's how that kind of works. It is just maybe a naming convention issue. But as we get back into the race here, doing a time attack mode, again, I love the visual improvements that are on offer here. Getting the actual internal rendering resolution to 4K, getting widescreen out, just makes it feel more like a Sega Model 3 game than a Sega Model 2 game. Of course, we're not going to have the level of polygonal complexity that we have in Sega Model 3 because that was way more powerful, but it definitely feels more like a Sega Model 2.5. And the interesting thing is the Sega Model 2 arcade hardware isn't just one board, it has multiple revisions as it actually goes along its life, getting more and more powerful. So basically this feels like a Sega Model 2.5 if Sega continued to push the Model 2 hardware and didn't quite bring out Model 3 for maybe a couple more years with an even more powerful set of silicon inside of it. But this were the glory days for Sega. Everything they made on Sega Model 2 was just absolutely outstanding, and they are still some of the best games that I think you can play out there as far as arcade goodness is concerned. And there's still a ton of Sega Rally arcade cabinets in the world because this game did absolutely massive numbers in arcades as far as cabinet sales were concerned. But again, with emulation you can make things even better, and that's fun. So if you take a look at the GitHub page here, you're going to see it says Sega Rally C.7z. That is not what I used. I used srallyc.zip, and again, it worked perfectly fine. But you'll see another list of the options here that you have on offer. One more soundtrack sample, then we'll go over a little bit more, but I'll be right back.
Long, medium, right. Caution, K left. Easy left. Checkpoint. Easy left. Easy left. Easy right. Easy left. Checkpoint. Hey left. Medium right, maybe. Long easy left.
So yeah, Wanszai now has a Sega Model 2 emulator out there that works for PC, both Windows 10 and 11, as well as the Xbox 360, Xbox One, and Xbox Series X. The setup guide is going to be different depending on how you want to play this one, so just pay attention to either the Windows portion or the Xbox portion when you set everything up. And I want to see the developer on this one just continue to add more Sega Model 2 games. I want Daytona, I want stuff like Gunblade New York, I want basically the entire library of stuff on Sega Model 2, including the games that Sega didn't make, because there are a few out there, available in 4K with 16:9 support, with higher rendering resolutions and internal frame rates. I just want the whole thing, because now we know it's possible, and I'm highly assuming that it is coming. But you let me comment down below and you tell me, did you know this one came out? Kind of slipped under the radar. I'm talking about it about maybe now, 24 hours after its release, 8 hours after it released when I recorded the voiceover. But you're probably going to watch this one on Saturday. But short of that though, links in the description below. You can't do any better than Wanszai's new Sega Model 2 emulator, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.